What's up, lovers of whiskey and watchers of YouTube? I'm the Malt activist, and today we go to Japan. Yes, in this video we are going to examine the Japanese whiskey producing regions and some of the best whiskeys you can buy from those regions right now. Let's go. First up, welcome to my first time viewers. Thank you for clicking through to that thumbnail. If whiskey is your jam, then this channel is the one for you. So if you want cool whiskey content, then subscribe or like or share or comment or share it with your friends. I don't know, whatever it is, but do something, man. Change the algorithm, make it work. We really need to make it work. And big up to all my returning viewers. Thank you, like I always say, for keeping your standards so damn low. In this episode of Malt Activist Says Stuff That Nobody Gives a Shit About, we are going to go to Japan. We're going to explore some whiskey regions. We're going to focus on some of the distilleries that I personally love. And more importantly, we are going to try and identify some whiskeys from those distilleries that you can buy today. Today you can buy those whiskeys. Okay. Okay. I guess we have nothing else to say other than let's go. About 10 years ago, a certain gentleman by the name of Mr. Jim Murray, the self-confessed Jesus Christ of the whiskey world, because, you know, why would he release a book called the Whiskey Bible otherwise and grow his hair long like that? I don't know. Anyway, Jim Murray at one point, who I think is a decent sort of whiskey writer, I guess. He has a Whiskey Bible that comes out with about 4,500 whiskeys that he's reviewed. I've had... I won't say the actual pleasure, but I will say I have had the opportunity to meet him. They say you should never meet your heroes, and I wish that was one I had not met. Anyway, but that's a story for a different episode altogether. But anyway, so about 10 years ago, I would say, he proclaimed the Yamazaki 2013 Sherry Cask as his whiskey of the year. And thanks to that, because he's still one of the more influential whiskey writers out there, thanks to him, we witnessed what we now know today as the Japanese shortage, the ultimate Japanese whiskey shortage. Not Japanese shortage. It's not like we were short on Japanese people. No. The rise of the Japanese whiskey shortage, and that's what happened. And thanks to him, the price of Japanese whiskeys skyrocketed. Not only did they become unaffordable, but also we lost out on age statement Japanese whiskeys. It was insane. We lost the Yamazaki 12 and the 18 and the Yoichi 15 and the 20 and the Miyagikyo 15 and the 20. We lost them all. Why? Because this one certain English gentleman with long hair and a book called the Whiskey Bible proclaimed the Japanese to be one of the best whiskey producing regions in the world. And there you have it. He's the reason why some of us have to shell out, I don't know, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 pounds for a bottle of Japanese whiskey, which is unfair. But having said that, one thing I do agree with him is that Japanese whiskeys, some of the more unique ones. Now, I'm never going to come out and say Japanese whiskeys are the best whiskeys in the world. No, I can never say that. I don't even think Scotch whiskeys are the best whiskeys in the world or Australian whiskeys are the best whiskeys in the world. I think each particular expression of whiskey stands on its own merits. And again, I may like something that you hate and I may hate something that you like. So there's no such thing as the greatest whiskey or the best whiskey in the world. It is just a figment of your own opinion, right? However, having said that, to complete your journey as a whiskey enthusiast, I would highly recommend exploring the world of Japanese whiskeys. And the reason Japanese whiskeys are so, fascinating to me is because in that small country, you have such a diverse sort of, range of climates, down from the south where it's hot and humid, right up to the north where it's super cold, and way up high in the mountains where it's just freezing. We have distilleries all over these places, and the water source of those distilleries is very unique to those regions. The whiskey making is very unique to that region, and so what happens is you get this you get this really diverse set of nuances and profiles and characteristics, you know, of whiskeys from essentially a very small region, Japan, very small country, and I find that very, very fascinating. So today I want to deep dive into two monster Japanese whiskey making companies. One is of course Suntory and the other is of course Nikka. And within their portfolio they have these two powerhouse distilleries as well. So for Suntory we have Yamazaki and Hakushu, and from Nikka we have Yoichi and Miyagikyo. So I want to talk about these four distilleries. I want to talk about the whiskeys that they produce, and I want to recommend a whiskey or a couple from each of these distilleries that hopefully you can buy now. Okay, so let's start from the south, go up north. How does that sound? Okay, so let's do that. So let's start with what is arguably Japan's most famous distillery. I'm talking about the Yamazaki distillery, and I have with me, just to showcase right now, the Yamazaki 25-year-old, which by the way, I managed to get my hands on many years ago. And believe me, I am not rich. I do not have the capacity to buy a Yamazaki 25 today. I bought this whiskey maybe 10, 11, 12 years. I don't know when I bought it, but I tell you, I bought it for a princely sum of 350 pounds sterling. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that this whiskey now goes for about, I want to say 10 or 12,000 pounds. Am I ever going to sell it? I don't know at the moment. It seems like a very expensive whiskey bottle to open up and drink, you know. And I say this without a shred of arrogance. It's astounding that you could be holding in your hand a whiskey that could be the answer to so many people's financial problems. And you know, and I'm not saying that I you know what I mean. I got this when it was 300 pounds because I could afford 300 pounds at the time, and I'm glad I bought it when I did, and so it is what it is. Yes, anyway, so sorry, that was a bit of a flex, I admit, and I'm not being arrogant over here, maybe just a little because I have my hands on this Yamazaki 25. So the Yamazaki distillery was founded in 1923 by Tori Shinjiro, I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly, Tori Shinjiro, and in the Yamazaki region, and the Yamazaki region is essentially the birthplace of commercial whiskey making, Japanese commercial whiskey making, right? And so this distillery began in 1923. Then in 1924, he hired distillery manager Taketsuru Masataka, who had been studying whiskey making at the University of Glasgow, then did his apprenticeship at Springbank in Campbelltown, and together they basically created the Yamazaki spirit and the Yamazaki distillery and everything that came out of it. And at that time it was just called Yamazaki until I believe the parent company Suntory was born. And Suntory now, as you know, is a powerhouse in the world of whiskey. I've said powerhouse too many times, haven't I? Yes. So the Yamazaki distillery, home to the Yamazaki whiskey, which by the way was one of the first Japanese whiskeys I ever tried. And it was a Yamazaki 12, which I thought was very nice. It has very unique sort of a fruity, floral, almost a grain-like profile to it. It's so soft, it's so delicate, and you know, it's just sort of expertly made, in my opinion. The Yamazaki 12 is a fantastic whiskey. The other one is called the Yamazaki Distiller's Reserve, which, while I'm not a massive fan of, because I feel it's quite sort of, I don't want to use the word one-dimensional, but I don't think it holds a candle to the 12-year-old. And the problem with the 12-year-old is, again, it's quite expensive. I think it'll set you back about maybe 150, 200 pounds, depending on where you look. Which means the only alternative to, you know, buying the Yamazaki 12 would be the Distiller's Reserve, which I believe is quite cheap now. I think anywhere between 70, 80 pounds. Again, I'm really sorry for calling 70, 80 pounds a cheap whiskey. I'm just saying in relation to the Yamazaki 12, it is considerably cheaper, about half the price. Is a Distiller's Reserve. So try and get your hands on it. It's a good, they're both great whiskeys. What I would highly suggest though, but again, stupidly expensive, is the Yamazaki 18, right? And I think that's the one that sort of sparked off this massive interest, because what happened was, when Jim Murray judged the Yamazaki 2013 as his whiskey of the year, that was a very limited run. That got sold out, and it was off the shelf very, very soon. So the next available whiskeys you could get your hands on was the Yamazaki 18 and the Yamazaki 12 and the other Japanese whiskeys like the Yoichis and the Miyagikyos, and all the 8 statement whiskeys disappeared off the shelf. So what do you have now? You have these Japanese whiskeys that are now, non-8 statement whiskeys, which try and emulate what they used to do back in the day with the 8 statement whiskeys. I don't think it holds a candle to that, but it is the choice we have right now. So what I would suggest is the Yamazaki 12 or the Yamazaki Distillers Reserve if you want to get your Yamazaki fix. Now, the Yamazaki Distillery, situated very near Kyoto, has access to nice, soft, pristine water source, and I think that reflects in its whiskeys. If I talk about the Yamazaki 12, for example, I want to make sure I get this correct. I have it here in front of me. It's matured in a blend of American oak, so bourbon, sherry oak, they don't say, probably Oloroso, and Mizunara oak casks. And those whiskeys are then blended together to make the Yamazaki 12. What do we have for flavor profiles? Rich and fruity, layers of honey, dried fruit, and subtle oak spice, right? So a very, very nice sort of combination of flavors and flavor profiles. Now, if we talk about the Yamazaki Distillers Reserve, slightly different maturation. Let me read it here. It says, matured primarily in Bordeaux wine, so, red wine, and sherry cask, I'm gonna guess Oloroso, imparting notes of dried berries, vanilla sweetness, and Mizunara oak spice. Okay. So the only difference between the Yamazaki 12 and the Distillers Reserve is that they use Bordeaux wine cask instead of the American oak. So again, look, slightly different drinking experience between the two. Yamazaki 12, I think, is a much more accomplished whiskey. The Distillers Reserve, I think, is a decent dram. But if you want to get your Yamazaki fix, I think if you can get your hands on either one, I think you'll be a happy camper. Not a bad dram overall, but if you can get your hands on the 18, even better. And finally, if you have a kidney or a couple of kids that you can sell, then I would highly recommend this Yamazaki 25 from the Yamazaki Distillery. The next whiskey I'm going to talk to you about is Hakushu. That's right, I'm talking about the Hakushu whiskey from the Hakushu Distillery, also owned by Suntory, so that's sister company of Yamazaki. Founded in 1973 by the Suntory people, this distillery is situated up in the Japanese Alps, right? Sort of very alpine environment. It has access to soft mountain water, and the whiskeys themselves are quite sort of herbal and slightly smoky, slightly peaty, and that's why I personally prefer the earthy, herbal minerality and the slight smoky and peatness of the Hakushu whiskey if compared to the Yamazaki whiskeys, right? So definitely for me, Hakushu stands a little above the Yamazaki whiskey in terms of the drinking experience, and this Hakushu 12, the one that I have in my hand right now, is a perfect example of just that beautiful, salty, earthy, almost you can taste the terroir that this whiskey is sort of exposed to, and I definitely think that the 12-year-old is absolutely amazing. Better than the Yamazakis, in my opinion. The Hakushu 18, again, impossible to find. The Hakushu 25, a unicorn among unicorns. So the only option I think you have right now would be the Hakushu 12, and again the Hakushu Distillers Reserve, which is again a non-age statement whiskey. Now the Hakushu 12, matured primarily in bourbon barrels, lightly peated, gently smoked. And what do I get on my flavor profile? I have herbal notes, fresh green apples, mint, and a gentle overall smokiness, which I really like. I love the mouthfeel of the Hakushu. It sort of coats your palate. It's wonderfully constructed, you know, and I like it because it has that little of peat in there, which I really like. On the other hand, the Hakushu Distillers Reserve also matured in American oak, but also has either a second maturation or a blend of spirit that's been matured in slightly peated barrels, or barrels that previously held slightly peated whiskey. So it imparts again a somewhat of a light peaty smoky note as well. Again, very similar flavor profiles of, you know, herbal notes. You know, when I drink that whiskey, I think of autumn. I think of, you know, gold and red leaves. It just has that. I get that image in my head, and I think that's a testament to that whiskey sort of extracting everything it does from the environment, and then it gets bottled in a single bottle. So I really like the Hakushu. I think I prefer it to the Yamazaki. So yes, two whiskeys from the distillery that I would highly recommend is the 12 and the Distillers Reserve. Definitely find the 12 if you can, for sure. I'm not 100% sure how much it costs. I think it costs slightly less or about the same as the Yamazaki 12. And again, I think the Distillers Reserve is fairly easy to find and quite affordable as well. But yes, I mean, yeah, get them. So two distilleries that we spoke of, Yamazaki, Hakushu, sister distilleries, producing a spirit that's very different. So Yamazaki, quite sweet, floral, fruity, ethereal, light and delicate, compared to the Hakushu, which is nice and sort of elemental, you know, minerality, smokiness, peat, salty air. Oh, just everything about it I love. So yeah, that was from Suntory. Suntory, the whiskey company. They're of course now, you know, huge. They lead the world in whiskeys. They bought Beam, and did they buy Beam or Beam bought them? I don't know, but it's Beam Suntory, and for sure, great whiskeys, both of them. Get your hands on it for sure. We now move up north in the Hokkaido region, where sits Nikka's Yoichi Distillery. Now, Yoichi, what can I say about Yoichi? Where's my Yoichi? There it is. My Yoichi 15, which I've been holding on to for a while now. There you go. Super dram. Again, I got all these whiskeys many years ago when they didn't cost an arm and a leg and 3 kidneys. But yeah, I have them. I've tasted all of them. The Yoichi from Nikka is just, especially the 15. Oh my God. It's amazing. It's absolutely awesome. But let's talk about the distillery first, right? Founded in 1934 by Taketsuru, who was previously with the Yamazaki distillery. Him and the owner of Yamazaki had a bit of a falling out, I believe, on creative differences. He said, you know what? I think I can do better. He decided, okay, I'm going to go up north. I'm going to open up my own distillery. I'm going to call it Yoichi. But actually he opened up Nikka as a distillery first. So he opened up the Nikka distillery, and then from there he basically branched into 2 main whiskey brands, which were Yoichi and Miyagikyo, right? So we'll talk about Yoichi first. But the distillery, the Yoichi distillery, essentially replicates the Scottish way of whiskey making, the old school Scottish way of whiskey making, where the stills are still, you know, heated by coal, and they're coal fired, the stills, and which is amazing, right? So the traditional Scottish whiskey making experience that Taketsuru had when he was in Campbelltown working at Springbank, he brought over to Japan. I'm not sure how much of that he was actually able to replicate with Yamazaki, but then when he opened up Nikka, which was his own company, and he started producing, well, they started off producing Nikka whiskey, but then it branched off into Yoichi and Miyagikyo. And the Yoichi Distillery, as it is now called, is just this throwback to this old school Scottish whiskey making tradition, and I think that's lovely, and I think that comes out in the whiskey itself. The distillery itself sits in a very, very cold climate, and the Yoichi, in terms of its maturation, is matured in ex-bourbon and sherry cask. From a flavor profile, it has hints of peat smoke, maritime notes, dried fruits, and warming spices. I've drunk this, and that flavor profile is more or less accurate. And the whiskey in itself is fantastic. I believe they also do a Yoichi non-age statement, which is not that great, to be very honest. What I would recommend in place of the Yoichi age statement, which again I think very, very hard to find on the ground, would be Nikka from the barrel, which is a blended malt. Now, just a little bit of context about Nikka from the barrel. So Nikka from the barrel comes in a 50 cl square bottle. I should have it lying here somewhere. Maybe I don't. Whatever. But you don't know exactly which one I'm talking about. And the whole controversy behind it was that it was about 95% Scotch. It was Scotch single malt in a Japanese branded bottle, and I think it was because of these fairly loose sort of Japanese rules and regulations pertaining to whiskey making, and they were able to sell this whiskey as a Japanese whiskey, but it was all Scotch. I'm not sure how much of that has changed, whether Nikka from the barrel is still part Scottish or 100% Japanese. I am not really sure, but you know what? I don't care. I mean, it's legislation. I don't drink legislation. You know what I mean? I drink the whiskey, and Nikka from the barrel is a fantastic dram. It's bottled at cask strength. I think it's about 52.4% or 54.2%. I'm not 100% sure. It's on the screen right now. I don't do my research. But that is a very, very good dram. It's still fairly affordable. I think you can get it for about less than 50 pounds if I'm not mistaken, or maybe a bit more. But yes, so if it's not the Yoichi age statement, then I would highly recommend getting hold of Nikka from the barrel, which is a blended malt. I do not recommend the Yoichi non-age statement. Not my cup of tea, to be honest. And finally, the last whiskey on this list, and certainly not the least, is the Miyagikyo. And again, I have the 15-year-old version of this. This is bottled at 45%. The others, by the way, I should have mentioned, were all 43%. This is probably the higher of the two. This is bottled at 45%, sorry. 45%. Which one is this? This is the Yoichi 15 that we were talking about. And this is bottled at... Where doesn't it say? What? That's not possible. How's that possible? How is it possible that it doesn't have an ABV on this? What? That, unless it's in Japanese, but that doesn't make sense. Can anyone tell me why? What? That's bullshit. And this is a legitimate bottle. I bought it from a trusted retailer, actually the duty free, and I promise you this is a real bottle. Oh my god, I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, guys, anyone who reads Japanese, can you have a look at this and tell me whether the ABV is written on this? This is unbelievable. I don't know. That's weird. Maybe it's a Japanese label? Okay, you know what? That's fine. We'll get to that. We'll get to my stupidity later. Right now, we're talking about Miyagikyo. Miyagikyo is, again, a distillery that is a sister distillery of the Yoichi distillery, And where is it found? Let's see. It is found in the Miyagikyo region. I should have figured that out myself, but no. I made notes just to make sure that I don't screw this up. So this was founded in 1969, also by Taketsuru, and it's located near Sendai. And it has gentle climate, clear waters, and which creates elegant, refined whiskeys. This is such bullshit brand propaganda I'm reading. Oh my god. No, but basically, look, the whole thing about all these Japanese distilleries in these very specific regions is access to a very unique source of water and a unique temperature and environment, right? Which is very unique to where they are, which means what you produce. And if you produce it in the most natural way, you will get a whiskey that sort of emulates or incorporates that sort of environment and those influences into the bottle itself. So that's what I mean, right? So Miyagikyo single malt whiskey from the Miyagikyo distillery. This one essentially matured in a mix of bourbon and ex-sherry barrels. And what do we have here? Lots of fruits, floral notes, delicate spice, and essentially I think this is probably closer to the Yamazaki. I feel the Yoichi is very close to Yamazaki, and the Miyagikyo is quite close to the Yoichi. You know what I mean? So the Hakushu. What am I saying? So yes, so the Miyagikyo closer to Yamazaki, and the Yoichi very close to the Hakushu. Very interesting sort of, counterpart comparisons. I don't know if this is by design or it just happened, though I don't believe in coincidences, but it is what it is. Yeah, so Miyagikyo, not a very sort of, a popular whiskey, flies very much under the radar. If you can get your hands on an age statement Miyagikyo, I would highly suggest doing that. The other one that they have is called the Apple Brandy Wood Finish, which is finished in apple brandy casks. I have not drunk that, but I've heard good things about it. And it is, what does it say? It imparts refined sweetness, fresh apple aromas. Of course it imparts fresh apple aromas. It's matured in ex-apple brandy cask, for God's sake. And subtle spice. So yeah, so Miyagikyo, interesting, right? Interesting dram. I think you should try and get your hands on it. If you get an age statement, for sure. Otherwise, give it a try. Give it a try. So that was it, man. So that wraps up our sort of foray, a very, very brief, small dip, a very gentle dip in the ocean that is Japanese whiskeys. We explored two major whiskey making entities in Japan, Suntory and Nikka, and within each of them we explored two of their brainchilds. So we had Yamazaki and Hakushu, and we had Yoichi and Miyagikyo from Nikka and Suntory respectively, and how them being in these different environments in a small country like Japan, which has such a broad spectrum of weather and terroir and a different type of water and the way they're built. So for up in the mountains, down south, up north, it's very interesting to see how climate and the environment really affects the making of whiskey. And so I think these four whiskeys are a sort of testament to that diversity that Japan claims to have in its weather system. So I hope you liked this video. I hope it piqued your interest. Oh, as if my video will pique your interest in Japanese whiskeys. You already have an interest in Japanese whiskeys. But if you haven't, really reached out and gone and found some, then I would strongly recommend the Yamazaki 12, the Hakushu 12, the Miyagikyo 15, and Nikka from the barrel. If you can't get any one of these, then the Yamazaki Distillers Reserve, the which was the other one? Yamazaki, the Hakushu Distillers Reserve. There's a Yoichi and Miyagikyo single malt, which non-age statement, which really doesn't do it for me. I think a good alternative is Nikka from the barrel, which is a blended malt. And of course, there is the Miyagikyo finished off in apple brandy cask. So that's one worth exploring, I think. So there you go. Yeah, long ass video for, I think, a subject that still needs a lot of exploration and deep diving into, but you know, I think we're out of time now. You don't want to see me rambling anymore, so this is it from the Malt Activist. Please tune in next time when I upload some cool videos, and I hope you like it. And I should have signed off 10 minutes ago. I'm the Malt Activist. Until next time, peace.